Good morning, everyone. Britt Simon here. Hope your weekend is starting off well. Mine is. Let's talk about any of the questions that you may have. I can't quite believe, again, confusion. You must be like waiting by YouTube or something to be the first person. Good morning to you. Confusion, you're always here. Yeah, exactly. It's like he must be, he's confused. So much desperation in DV world nowadays. Some people need tough talk. Yeah, I know you love the rants, confusion. I'm not sure. I try not to rant. It's just that there's a lot to rant about at the moment these days. Okay, so let's jump into some news. I think the most significant thing going on this week is a series of. Let me see if actually I can bring up some of these things, but. There's a series of judgments that are happening in various lawsuits. Many of you are probably aware DV lottery lawsuits are going. There's lawsuits against the government for some of the things that have been that have been done, obviously for DV lottery, both the 75 country pause, the DV lottery pause itself, and the 39 country ban. There are lawsuits that are attacking at least sort of the two main aspects of that, DV lottery and 75 country pause. But that 75 country pause affects a lot of other people, and the bans affect other people. And so there are lots of lawsuits going on. And actually, let me just show you this. A couple of cases that I sort of mentioned here. Let me just put that down there. Right. So last night I reposted a couple of these cases. There's quite a lot of good activity in these other cases, and my point is that these are chipping away. This is what probably some people don't understand what I'm talking about here. Chip. But these cases are chipping away at the overall power of these pauses. So as other lawsuits are proving that the government's action or inaction is unlawful, those lawsuits create kind of a precedent and a pathway for our lawyers to follow. Now, in many ways, our lawyers are already going down those pathways. In fact, they are some of the winning cases are coming through the same sort of group of law firms, Red Eagle Law and Impact, that you're already aware of. But there are other lawyers as well who are trying their best to get wins for their cases, and they're succeeding. The courts are coming down on the side of the people, not the government, in terms of this action being capricious and arbitrary, in terms of the process not having been rolled out correctly, APA arguments and so on. And so there's a lot of activity which is showing that that this is really unlawful behavior by the government. And we know that. I've talked to you about that before. You all know that. You know that this activity is unlawful. But there's a sort of a gray area, a gray line between what's reasonable and what's unreasonable. And I've talked about that before, to make sure you understand that it needs to become unreasonable for a court to take some action and do something about it. But courts are, and that's my point really. Preliminary injunctions are being issued. TROs are being issued, and pretty soon we'll start to see some summary judgments being issued on various aspects of these pauses, finding that the government's action is unlawful in various ways. And it's all surrounding their administrative actions, which is what they've done in the 75 country pause and the DV lottery pause. They are administrative actions. They're not the same as a proclamation or an executive order from the president. They are simply administrative actions, and that doesn't carry the same weight as the executive order or proclamations carry. And there isn't really any basis in the law for any of what they've done in terms of the administrative procedures. So there is protection in the court system. It's just that that court system and the process needs to play out. But if you get the time, go on my Twitter page, click into a couple of these, and read some of the read some of these wins. You can go in and find the cases. If you search by the judge name and so on, you can find the case that's being talked about. And again, these are not DV lottery cases. These are I-865 cases, or various cases for individuals or small groups who are complaining about the way they've been treated. So these are important cases for us because they're attacking the same principles. And they're also attacking one very key principle, by the way, which I should mention, which is there's this concept of consular non-reviewability on their decisions. We can't, there is no formal process of complaint when a decision has been made in a case, if they've adjudicated your case. So once they've said that you're refused, it's very difficult to come back from that, right? If it's a final refusal. These 221G cases should not be considered final refusals. But a final refusal is very difficult to come back from because of a concept called consular non-reviewability. It means the consular officer has the power to make a decision, and it's very difficult to overcome that unless you're very, very confident and clever in the way that you actually proceed from that point. But these 221G refusals, the government would like to say that they are non-reviewable because they are decisions by the consular officer. And the actions like not doing some interviews and that sort of thing, the government would like to say that's non-reviewable. That's nothing to do with us. But these lawsuits that are achieving wins are attacking that sort of fundamental principle and saying, no, you can't just delay cases forever without an end date and say that's administrative procedure and therefore not reviewable. You can't do that. And so these cases are proving that the courts are not putting up with that crap. So that's important to us. It's an important principle that that will be, it'll become more clear as time goes on, as the lawsuits go on, why that's important. Okay. So, all right, let's take some questions on various topics. Let's see what you've got to ask this morning. The update on DV27. So many people have put some weight on the OMB form. On Reg Info, you can find information about the version when they change a document or they change a version of a document that is used in government process. There's a whole set of procedures that have to sort of go on. So various departments have to sort of review that form and review the process behind that form and so on, and everybody has to agree. And one of the agreements that is needed is controlled by the Office of Management and Budget, I think it's called, OMB. And the OMB had to make a review of the DV lottery entry form because it takes time to process, and also now it has a budgetary effect because of the $1 fee. But it's always been reviewable because it takes time to process anyway. There's a law with regard to the amount of paperwork that we force people to go through when they're applying for certain sort of things through the government. So there's another law, as well as a law like the Administrative Procedures Act. There's another law which is the Paperwork Reduction Act, which basically says you can't create super complex forms for people to fill out. Those forms have to be reasonable in terms of the amount of time someone needs to spend or the amount of expertise people need to spend in filling out those forms. And so the government are required to do extensive analysis on how long each form takes to fill out and so on. And so for the DV lottery entry process, that's another form that has to be reviewed for the amount of paperwork that's creating or the amount of hassle that's creating. And they measure that in terms of how many people are using that form, how long will it take to fill out the form, and so on. And so that process had to be completed. And strangely enough, the government took their sweet time about getting that approval on that process. But that's cleared out of the way now. That form is now approved by the OMB, which means that we've got the finalized rules. Both rules are in place. So we have the rule for the $1 fee. That's final rule. We have the rule for the passport. That's a final rule. And we have approval on the form itself for the DV lottery entry. And so those are the only barriers, as far as I'm aware, for them to actually roll out the new lottery process for DV 2027. So that means, I expect them to roll out the announcement probably over the next couple of weeks. Probably I'm thinking before the end of April, they'll probably announce it, and they'll probably run the process during May. That's my best guess at the moment. It could take longer than that. I don't know, but I don't know for sure. I haven't got any solid evidence to say that timeline, other than just a sort of a guess of what they're probably going to do. Okay, so probably going to be in that timeline. Okay, and in terms of the pause lift, by the way, another common question that we're going to have 58 times probably is, when will the pause be lifted? Well, it's probably going to take until mid to late May before we have some sort of hearing on the lawsuits. The government could choose to react at any time, and any of these other lawsuits, by the way, could vacate some of the policies. So to vacate a policy means to delete, if you like, to remove the policy. So it is possible between now and, let's say, the end of May, that another lawsuit, not a DV lottery lawsuit, is able to remove the 75-country pause, because there are lawsuits that are seeking to vacate that policy, and so far, the lawsuits seem to be going in the direction that, yes, that policy is likely to be vacated. Now, if it's vacated for everybody, not just for plaintiffs in those lawsuits. They can achieve small wins for those plaintiffs for sure. But if the policy itself is taken down and vacated, then that will be gone for everyone. That's the 75-country pause. The DV lottery pause, of course, none of the other lawsuits are fighting for that policy to be taken down. Only DV lottery cases are fighting for that. But the same arguments will be in place that if they're successful in taking the 75-country pause down, the same arguments will be in place and even more effective in the DV lottery pause, because the DV lottery pause is completely arbitrary. It was just based on a tweet by Christy Noem. There was no deliberation at all about, or no logic applied about having that pause in place. So they're not allowed to act like that. They did act like that, and they caused the pain. But of course, it takes time, therefore, to go through courts, sue them, and to stop them behaving like that. But it is possible over time. Okay. Talk about hosting, how to get a host. So this is an interesting question. I'm fully aware that there is at least one YouTuber who I don't particularly like, to be honest, because she's a liar and I think she's just interested in taking money from people. But there is at least one YouTuber that offers or has offered in the past a hosting matchup service. Now, hosting is a bit of a weird thing for me as a European. It's kind of a strange idea, but it does work particularly for African countries. It is something that's more accepted in some of the African countries. When we talk about a host, it's someone who is going to provide a place for you to sleep, a place for you to stay, and perhaps that person will help you get a job, and perhaps they'll help you sort of figure out transport and that sort of thing. And so it's someone who is offering to help you as you move to the country. But that, when I think of a host, I think of that being a stranger, not necessarily someone you know. If it's someone you know, then that's not. I mean, it is a host, but it's more. To me, it's a more sort of safe thing to go with someone you know, a family member or a friend, or a friend of a friend or a friend of a family member or something. That sort of host, I think, is a very good idea. But when you go to a host where that host is a stranger and they're going to help you with things, you have to wonder at their motivations. And that's the problem I have with, at least this one YouTuber that's done this sort of stuff in the past. She's very clearly been about trying to make a business of these things, and it kind of worries me. And I'm not supportive of that, but if you want to try and find a host through that sort of method, by all means do so. If you feel it would help you come to the country, by all means do that. I just don't, I don't have any contacts, and I'm not going to get involved in trying to arrange hosting arrangements between two strangers. I think that's kind of, that for me is a step too far. If I were hosting, I would trust myself, of course, right? But I know that, I've been doing this, for example, for 13 years, and I've been doing this, for the correct reasons. I'm not trying to make money from this or make money from people or anything else like that. And so I would trust myself, but trusting other people, that's a bit of a tall order. So I don't get involved in that. So best way is to talk to people that you know and try and find out, someone that you know through a friend or a friend of a friend or something like that, right? Think about, and what sort of arrangement are you going to have? You're obviously going to pay some rent. That's fine. You'll probably be in a room in a shared house or something like that. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a way to get your foot in the ground. But just be a little bit careful. Be a bit smart about people taking advantage of you, and don't make long-term commitments to repay money over long periods of time and that sort of thing. Don't do that. Okay. Hello from Austria. Hello, Uncle Simon. Uncle Simon. I love it when people call me Uncle. Hello from Riga, Latvia. Feels like DV 26, 27 will merge into one. Yeah. They're always kind of like that. There's, for a large part of the year, I'm talking to people from at least 2 years, right? And at times I've been talking to people from 3 years. But it's very common that there will be either an entry period, or some people have been selected, or they're waiting to be selected while the previous year is still going on. And it's the weirdest time for me is when we get towards the end of September, because literally from one day to the next, because of the rules of the system, on the 30th of September, one group of people's dreams dies, and another group of people's dreams begins, right, on the 1st of October. And it's literally, it's a grieving process, and it's a terrible time of the year for some people, because it represents the end of their dream. But it's a beginning for other people. They're now into their year, and they're expecting their interview and so on. So it's a bittersweet time of year. But yeah, that's the sort of thing that happens. The king is back. I don't know who you mean. Do you mean the king? No. Any update for DV26? Yeah. Namaste from Nepal. Any updates regarding lawsuits for EDV proposals? Well, that was the update that I gave in the beginning, really. There are lawsuits still going through. The impact and the Red Eagle law cases have both, I think, filed their summary judgments now. And so now it's a matter of waiting for the government's response to those summary judgment filings. And we'll see what the reaction is. This will take time, though. You have to understand this is going to take time. Don't expect this to be sort of, all fixed in a couple of weeks' time. It's probably going to be, I think, probably the end of May at the earliest before we're going to get a real result from the lawsuits. Okay, so we'll see. Hi, Simon. If I don't receive an auto-reply email from KCC, does that mean that my correspondence is not reaching them? Should I try from another mailbox? No reply for 3 weeks. Charles, I think I answered you this morning on my blog. because I recognize exactly the question and the fact that you've been trying for 3 weeks. So let me repeat what I've said to you on the blog, just in case other people have the same sort of idea. So when you email KCC, normally you get an auto reply. We know it's an auto reply because it comes within a few minutes. However, a lot of people's mailbox systems are putting those auto replies into spam folders and trash folders, because it is an auto reply. It's got the markings of a spam thing. Now, once that happens, your email system is more likely to treat subsequent replies as spam because it's already got some from that email address as spam, right? And so it can create a situation where people miss those replies. So that's a possibility, Charles. The other thing is you have to make sure that you identify yourself in your emails. It doesn't matter what email you email from. You can email from an email address, from any email address. It doesn't have to be the one that they know about. But you have to identify yourself. When you're emailing KCC, you have to identify yourself with 3 pieces of information. One is your full name, right? It must clearly say your full name. Obviously, your last name is most important, but the full name. Then the full case number, including the leading zero. So what I mean by your full case number is if you're year 26 and you're from Africa, it'll start off 2026 AF, and then it'll have like 4 zeros or 3 zeros or something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, zeros. They are the leading zeros. We tend to drop them when we're using the SEAC system, and when we're talking to each other, we tend to drop those leading zeros. But KCC won't talk to you unless you've included those leading zeros. So you include those leading zeros, and then you put the rest of your case number. Okay, you need that, and also you need your date of birth in the American format, which is month, date, and then year. They do MM/DD/YYYY, right? If you're used to computer format, that's the sort of the format mask that you would use, right? Okay, I hope that helps, and that's pretty much identical to what I said in the blog as well. Bertini, how are you doing? Could there be a possibility that the judge will give an injunction for pause next week because the government's arguments were very weak? No, because nobody's asking for an injunction. The Judge Ali switched both cases to a summary judgment. They were originally filing PIs, but he wanted a summary judgment, which means that Judge Ali set out a calendar where he said the government are going to have some time to provide some records, which is the administrative record. Then I want a motion for summary judgment from the plaintiffs, which is Red Eagle Law and Impact on behalf of you guys. Then the government are going to have time to respond to that filing, right? And then the plaintiffs will have another response, to the response, right? So there's an already arranged calendar that says how the argument is gonna go, and everyone's got a timeline, and that process finishes up, I think, around about May 10th, from memory, on the Red Eagle Law lawsuit, around about that time for Impact as well, I think. So there's a calendar already laid out for the summary judgment process, right? And they did not go down the PI route, right? And to me, that's a very positive thing. I saw that as a very positive thing. I would rather get to the summary judgment as long as we can get to that fast. And that's the point. Judge Ali actually made that fast. He made that whole schedule very quick, which means everything will be in front of Judge Ali in mid-May, right? Both sides will have put all their arguments. The summary judgment motion will have been considered. The administrative record was taken into account when the summary judgment was filed. The government will have had all of their chances to respond to the accusations being made from our side, and so on. Everybody will have had their chance to talk. And they'll probably have, or I think the lawyers are expecting there to be oral argument as well, a hearing, an actual court hearing. That's a possibility. But it doesn't have to be that way. Judge Ali could actually say, you know what, I can see enough, I know enough, I'm ready to give my judgment anyway. And then the judge will issue his judgment, which we shouldn't expect that to come very, very quickly. It's very frustrating time, but there's nothing we can do to speed up the judge. They are in charge of the calendar. They decide how long they take, and they understand the urgency. That's part of the lawsuit briefing, but nevertheless, they decide how long they take. And so, it seems like Judge Ali is trying to hurry people up because he wants this to go quickly. And so I'm sort of expecting an answer, a final judgment in May, but it could be in early June, right? So we'll see. But no, I don't think we're going to get out of the blue. I don't think Judge Ali is going to say, hey, thanks for that summary judgment stuff, but here's an injunction for you. No, I don't think that's going to happen. Okay. Saudi mishaves with maids, some of them run from their bosses and have Amban if win DV lottery. How can I get police clearance to allow me to have? I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but in general, I've got a little bit of dyslexia, so reading some of these things is difficult because I question whether I'm reading bad or whether your English is bad, and whether you're confused and that sort of thing. But anyway, I read the words police clearance. So how do you get a police clearance? Well, you go to the reciprocity page and you can just Google the words reciprocity page, right? It literally comes up if you just Google that, right? It's very, very easy. And it takes you straight to an index, which shows you. Let me show you. Let me show you that little process. So I'm going to Google the words, right? Reciprocity, and it just comes up. So yeah, I Google that often, and it comes up with this link, right? Reciprocity and civil documents by country. If many of you get me shouting at you because you haven't read the instructions, I'm generally trying to get you to come and read, amongst other things, these instructions. There's another phrase that works magically. If you are selected, this phrase, for some reason, Google knows exactly what that means, right? And takes you straight to the instructions for DV lottery. And when I say read the instructions, I mean come in here and take the bloody time, because if you don't think this is important, I can't help you. So you take the time to read these steps. You go step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? You go through all of those steps, and as you click on some of these, you'll see preparing for the interview, and you'll see, for example, a list of embassies and consulates. And I just right-clicked on that link, and here's all the consulates with their individual instructions per consulate, and this is how you find out where to get the medical and any other instructions, right? It's all there, right? That's the list of consulates, and that came from the prepare for the interview link there, step number 8. And also in there is going to be the reciprocity page, which tells you how to get certain documents, right? And so when I say read the instructions, I mean read that set of instructions, all of them. Don't tell me you don't ask me stupid questions, and it's because you haven't bothered reading the instructions. You're going to get told off, right? I'm going to tell you off. And so, you need to read these instructions, but also you need to go and check out the links, right? So you've got the list of embassies and consulates and so on, and then it's got all the documentation stuff. It's got everything in there, right? It's got everything. You really don't need me. You don't need Brit Simon, actually, if you just read the bloody instructions. It's all in there. But one of the things that you'll find in there is a link to this reciprocity page. And so that's one of the 3 things. So the main instructions is one, the reciprocity page is the second one, and the embassy specific instructions is the third. You look at the embassy specific instructions of the embassy that you expect to interview in to get the instructions for that embassy, and it will tell you the medical information and any other weird requirements that they got for that embassy, right? you look at the reciprocity page for any country that you need documents from. Okay, so you may be going to interview, let's be optimistic. Let's say you're going to Accra in Ghana, and that's the embassy where you expect to interview. So you would look at the embassy-specific instructions for Accra, right? But you would look at the reciprocity page. Let's say you lived in France for a year and you were born in, I don't know, you were born in Benin, right? So you would look at the reciprocity page for Benin, right, and for France to see what documents you need to provide for your birth certificate and so on. And so as we go in there and we say, okay, let's go and have a look, we can have a look at any of these countries and say, okay, so for Algeria, how do I get a document? Okay, what documents do I need? Well, I was born in Algeria, so I need a birth certificate. How do I get a birth certificate? Here you go, there's the instructions. I lived in Algeria after the age of 16 for 5 years. And so I'm going to need police records. How do I get that? There you go. It's all in there, right? Tells you exactly how to get it. So so when you want to know how to get your documents, that's what you do. You follow the instructions. You come to the reciprocity page, and you go to the embassy specific notes, and you read the main instructions. That's it. That's the whole thing you do. Okay, it really is as simple as that. Now, I don't know what you're talking about. Mishaves with a maid. That doesn't sound right. But by all means, go and have a look for your police clearance in your country and see how you get that. Okay. All right. Hope that was, excuse the diversion talking about instructions, but that's important. That really is very important. Okay. Next question. I'm OC12XX 1200 range. DS260 still not processed, and I guess my embassy in UAE, Abu Dhabi, is also not taking interviews now, even though the war seems to have de-escalated. Any hopes for us by September? Yeah. Now, I'm kind of surprised your DS260 is not processed yet, although they tend to take different amounts of time. There seems to be an assumption that all DS260s filed on a certain date would all, be finished by a certain date. That's not the case at all. You can expect your DS260 to take longer if you have certain things on your case. And the certain things are, it could be kicked off by your name. It could be your profession or your education. It could be your travel or your work history. There's various things that they're looking at. They're using AI to go through your DS260 and rate it in terms of whether it needs further investigation or not, right? And once they've said, okay, for that DS260 to be processed, because that person has been in the Middle East or something, and is a nuclear rocket scientist, we're probably going to need a little bit more information about that. And so, then they start using their information gathering exercises, etc., their databases and so on, in order to get whatever information they can on you or people that you may know. Okay. And so they're trying to build a picture about whether you're a safe person to let into the country or not. And if any of that sounds like Big Brother, well, tough shit, because that's what they're going to do, right? And this process and all immigration in general is vulnerable because there are people that do come to this country that have ill intention towards America or Americans. And that constantly worries people over here, and quite rightly. The government are empowered and need to know who's coming here, and they need to protect us and keep us safe. Otherwise, that would be a problem. Now, that in every administration, that legitimate power is sometimes either over or under exercised. Right now, I believe it's being over exercised. I think they're doing too much, and they're scaring people too much, and they're being too aggressive towards well-meaning immigrants and non-immigrants, but they're being too powerful, too strong. But nevertheless, I do want to know that some security checks are in place, right? It's got to be a balance. It can't be, completely open, right? So that's why it goes on. But anyway, yes, you've still got a chance by September, but what's going to happen with the pauses, what's going to happen with the war, and so on. Those are all sort of real risks. And yeah, this is a riskier than usual year, shall we say. Also, I haven't obtained my police clearances from UAE, Australia, and Fiji. Should I start now or wait for the 2NL? I would start now. Your police certificates are good for up to 2 years. So you would not be in a wise position to wait until you've actually got your 2NL to sort of start gathering those. You want to be sitting on those a little bit early. And if they're a few months old when you go for interview, that's fine. It's no problem at all. So yeah, obtain them early. That would be a wise thing. Hello, sir, from Azerbaijan. Will DV27 lottery registrations open, or will it skip to DV28 without a DV27? I don't think it'll skip. I do think they're going to run the DV27 entry period, but only time will tell. And there's no point in arguing with me about it. If there's someone there that's saying, I don't think they're going to do that, and some of you just really want to argue about this crap, I don't know why. But you're entitled to your own opinion. I believe they're going to do it, because it's part of the law, and I've got good reason to say that they're going to do it. You don't want to believe that. You want to be negative, Debbie Downers all the time. Okay, well, that's fine. If you want to be negative, be negative. I just don't want to be negative like that. Thank you very much. They are dragging this as long as they can. Those who have got 221G have a chance, but how much of a chance, who knows? Yeah, we don't know. Hey, Simon, unique question. Unique question, I very much doubt. I haven't even read the question, but I very much doubt it's unique. Very rarely I get a question I haven't answered before. If DV pause passes September 30th, 2026, can unused visas be recaptured for DV27 like EB or expire, forcing Congress to amend INA 203C state, add permanent stricter vetting anyway? Okay. Yeah, not a unique question at all, as I suspected. People have asked me before that question, and I've answered it many times. But here's the answer. No, those cannot be recaptured. They will not be recaptured. They can't be held open, and they won't be applied to DV 2027 or any other DV year. Once they're gone, they're gone. September 30th is a final deadline. Now, some lawyers, including Curtis, have tried and in court tried to sort of press that point. And I think Curtis actually still believes he has a legal argument to make about that. However, I think he now would not try and make that argument, if you see what I mean. I think he would, it's probably, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So Curtis has long held, in fact, the first person that I ever started to sort of talk about that with, was Curtis, I believe. There was a case called Al Makrami, I think it is, where prior to DV 2020, there was a case that was going through, and the court held open that case for some time, with the idea that they could somehow give the visa later as if it was given today. And it was, nunc pro tunc was the Latin that we used at that time to describe that policy. And Curtis has always been a fairly strong proponent of that. And for a while, it looked like Curtis was going to be proven right. But the appeals court has now come down on the DV 2020 cases and said, no, that's not allowed. And now I regard, and I think we all must regard, the end of the fiscal year as being final. Now, maybe at some point in the future, we'll come back and we'll argue that again, maybe. But it seems like that would be a very expensive argument and probably not worth considering. And therefore, that's why I'm saying we should just consider that at the end, right? 30th of September is a final deadline, hard deadline, and no, they won't reapply the visas. Now, there was also a bill introduced some years ago to try and achieve the same thing. And so if government want to change that, they can change that. But, that sort of immigration reform on behalf of DV lottery, which is not particularly popular in Congress anyway, it probably doesn't stand much of a chance, right? Okay. I know the other YouTuber you're talking about, you're right, shouldn't seem as legit as you. Yeah, I don't think her motivations are quite right, frankly. Hi, sir. I'm from Sri Lanka. In which pause my country in? In 75 country pause or in global pause? And when would they lift this pause? Can we have good hope? So there is a list. So you can always just Google, and let me just show you how Google works. You can come in here, you can just Google, and you put 75 country pause list of countries, right? Now, I only type with 2 fingers, so, you can type as quick as I can. So you can come in here, and then you'll get to this link, for example, which, as you can see, I've looked at that before. And hey presto, there's the list of 75 countries, right? You're asking about Sri Lanka. And I have to look at this. I don't remember all 75 countries. But is Sri Lanka in there? No, it's not in there. Okay, so that means that no, Sri Lanka, for some reason, is not part of the 75 country pause. Okay, otherwise it would be about here, wouldn't it, in the S's, right? So that's what you do. You can just do that at any time yourself. Okay. When will they lift the pause? Well, talked about that already. I'm hoping it happens in May, maybe June. We'll see. And but the other common question is, are the lawsuits only going to achieve a win for the lawsuits? And there are a lot of people who are hoping that exactly that happens, that only the plaintiffs will be helped by the lawsuits, and that's a possibility. And if you talk to the lawyers, they would say that's a high possibility. But of course they would say that because they are in that business, right? But I think there's a probably fairly significant possibility that the lawsuits could also make things better for non-plaintiffs. That's my personal opinion. The lawyers don't agree with me, and so that's up to you what you think. But that would be the thing. Like if you're sitting there and you're not a plaintiff on the lawsuit, and the lawsuits might win, but they might only win for the people who've paid to be on the lawsuit. Okay, it's a possibility. I just think that's fundamentally, I'm not saying it's wrong, and I don't want to use the word unfair, but that's sort of the word I'm thinking of. But it's a bit, I would rather it didn't only work for the plaintiffs personally. But if I was a plaintiff, I would prefer it only works for the plaintiffs, right? Those are the people that paid the money. So, it's up to you what you think about that. Okay, I recently transferred my case for Doha to Nairobi, which was current and ready for interview at 42K. How does the AV theory work with the transferred case? We don't know. We don't know where you fit in. The only thing I do know is that at worst, you would fit into the next batch. Now, I did create a video on how these AV queues, these queues of cases at AV work. And it confuses people a lot because people don't understand why sometimes cases go out of numerical order. Higher case numbers can get scheduled before lower case numbers for some people, and it's because of when you're added to the queue. And so that kind of makes a difference. With a transferred case, generally speaking, those cases only really get transferred, and we shouldn't even be using the word transferred, because that's transfer actually happens after the case has been scheduled. But let's say reassigned. So with a reassigned case where you switch from one embassy to another embassy, those will probably be added to the next batch of cases added to the AV queue, in after you've been moved, right? But I don't know for sure whether you take some sort of earlier preference or not. I don't know. we'll have to wait and see. That's one of the nuances we can't really tell from from how it works before. Okay. As someone who is a DV26 winner and potential F1 visa recipient, do you think I'd have problems leaving the States to do my DV interview in case the pause is voided? I mean, it's a risky thing, Nicola. Sorry. It's a slightly risky sort of thing because, yes, if you're on an F1 visa and you leave the States, when you go for the DV interview, what's happened to some people is their visa has been cancelled without prejudice. Typically, it happens on B1, B2 visas, but it's possible that they could cancel your F1 visa. Then if the pause continues and you don't get the DV lottery visa, the risk is that your F1 is being cancelled and you can't return. So if you're on F1 status, then frankly, why are you not considering adjustment of status? I would much prefer, frankly, if I were in that situation, I would much prefer an adjustment of status case. You've got more rights. I mean, some of the pauses apply to adjustment of status cases, but not all of them. And you've got certain benefits if you're on adjustment of status. So that would be the right path, really, rather than leaving the country. It seems a bit risky to me to go out of the country at the moment, with everything that's going on. And of course, you wouldn't do that unless you really, really believe the pause had been lifted or was about to be lifted. But be careful with this government. We just don't know, right? You have to be very, very careful. Hello, Joe. How are you doing? Greetings from Switzerland. Could you please talk about, in greater detail, about DV27 by Curtis? If government was to act in bad faith and not announce DV27, would ruling in months help anyhow? Curtis has got one cause of action, I believe, in his lawsuit, which is to try and force DV27 entry period to begin. I don't think we'll be waiting that long, to be honest. I don't think the lawsuit will bring that. I've always seen them as disconnected. I don't believe the pauses have anything to do with the DV27 pauses, because if you think about it, the pauses happened in December, whereas the delay to DV27 happened in September, actually. They would normally have announced DV27 in September, and they didn't. And if you look back, you can look back at the amendments to the form, which we have from June of last year. So there's a whole sort of set of breadcrumbs that show that DV27 would have been delayed with or without the pauses, right? So I don't connect the pauses to DV27. It's sort of coincidental that it's this year that they chose to increase the standard in terms of the passport rule and the $1 fee, and all of those things have taken a long time to. I mean, it's been like Keystone Cops. The way they've behaved over this whole thing has been, completely inefficient, stupid, moronic. But what do we expect from this government? That's exactly what I expect: inefficient, moronic, stupid. So we now have to wait and see whether they announce the DV entry period or not. If they do, then it will moot out that cause of action in the Red Eagle case. If not, maybe the Red Eagle case sort of prompts it to happen. We'll see. So I don't know much more than that about Red Eagle's cause of action and their strategy, beyond the fact of saying that the government are told to act and do certain things, and they are breaking the law if they don't do those things, right? And that's why we can hold them to account and say, hey, you are charged by Congress, you are told by Congress to hold this lottery thing every year. It doesn't matter you don't like it. It doesn't matter that Trump doesn't like it, or that Kristi Noem doesn't like it, or whatever else. That's your fucking job. So do your job, right? Excuse my French. Do your job, right? And remember, we're talking to administrators who are semi-political. Some of them are political appointees, some are not. And so the people who are not, they're cashing a check. They're all cashing a check, whether they're political appointees or not. But they're taking a daily salary to do certain jobs. I can't call into my job and say, hey, I want all of my check, but I only want to do half my job. I can't do that. Neither can you, right? So why does the government get to do that? And the answer is they don't. And that's why we're suing them. They have to do all the pieces of their job, including running the lottery process every year, including holding the entry period open and so on. It has to be done. Congress has set that as a law, and the administrators don't get to decide to not do that on a whim, right? What do I think of Texas? Is it very expensive there? I have mixed feelings about Texas. First of all, it is a great state. There's no doubt. It's economically, it's a powerful state. It's not as wealthy as California, but I think it's probably in the top three in terms of wealth. No, not the top three in terms of wealth. What we're talking about, New York would be in there. But anyway, it's a wealthy state. There are good opportunities there. There is good possibility. There's good weather there. There's some bad weather too. Be careful in Texas. You can be looking at snow in Texas in the winter. There's some very harsh conditions that Texas does receive. But in general, the weather there is pretty good. So economics are good, weather's good. That I worry about the weather. I think about the weather. I don't want to be in cold places, and so weather is good. The general, sort of political environment leans to the right. Now, why is that? Why am I talking about that? Is it because I'm a raving, Democrat? No, I'm not a raving Democrat. In fact, to be honest, my politics in the UK lean to the right in the UK. But leaning to the right in the UK is like being, a Democrat here in the States, because everything is shifted. The political system in America is shifted. And so, it's also shifted by religion and everything else in some horrible ways I don't even like. But so that's why. I would conceivably vote for a Republican president, for example, or a Republican governor, if they were sensible. The current mob are not sensible, of course, and shouldn't be voted for. But I would vote for them because their policies aren't normally crazy. But in Texas, you're going to have quite a bit of the sort of the religious undercurrent. You're going to have quite a lot of the sort of MAGA Republican thing. You're going to have quite a lot of that. And unfortunately, you're also going to have quite a lot of the racism thing. Okay, so you are going to have those things that will go on in Texas. So, is that a problem for you? I don't know. I don't know anything about you. I can't see a profile picture. I can't see if race would be an issue for you or not. But those are the things you should consider. Good economy in Texas, no state tax, high taxes in other ways, high cost of living in other ways, higher than you would expect. But very free state, shall we say? Very free in lots of ways. Your behavior is generally going to be free. You'll experience freedom, as you do all about America. But there are some states where there's a bit more freedom, and so it can be pretty good. Some people like it. I personally don't think I would live there. Right. Austin is just about okay for me, but I don't think I would live in other places. A friend of mine just bought a hotel in Dallas, a neighbor of mine actually just down the road. He just bought a hotel in Dallas. So there's good business to be done there for sure. Dallas, Houston, Austin, they're great places to do business. There is money there. There is good business there. But would I want to live there personally? I wouldn't, but I understand why people do. Hi Simon, 2024, 2025 diversity visa winner here. I want to thank you on your live streams. Kept me updated during the whole process, and I'm now in Iowa, USA. Good job. But Iowa, have I taught you nothing? Why are you in Iowa, for God's sake? Iowa. Oh well. Okay, You can lead some horses to water, but they won't always drink, right? So yeah, do tell me why you chose Iowa. I'd be interested. I mean, there's probably some nice parts about it. I just can't think of anything right now. What is the performance of Nepal Embassy? Nepal Embassy is normally pretty good. I think they're backlogged back to about 8 or 9K, roughly. But the Nepal visa bulletin number just went up to 11K from 10K in the last visa bulletin. It was the only change that was made in the last visa bulletin. To me, that suggests that the embassy is trying to sort of get to the end of its numbers. So it's normally pretty good. I wouldn't be worried about Nepal unless I had a very high number, which for Nepal is probably in the 12, 13 range. Even then, you'll probably be okay. When is DV27 entry period to be open for entries? We don't know. Come up, Poppy. Come up, Poppy. Yeah, Poppy was barking. Oh my God, she's sitting on my stairs. I wish I could show you. She's sitting on my stairs, which is about 25, 30 feet away from me, 40 feet maybe. And she heard her name, so she turned around. She's looking. She heard her name. That's so funny. She's a terrible dog. Sorry, Poppy. She's a rescue dog, so she's got a bad attitude. My Poppy. I'm afraid she's not a great dog, and that's my fault. But oh well. Like it or not, 2027 is almost over, isn't it? Please give realistic answer. The realistic answer, like Mina, despite you trying to be a Debbie Downer, is if I had to put percentages on it, I would be in the sort of 99% range plus that it will happen. That's how strongly I feel about it. So you are 100% negative towards it. Your realistic answer that you want to be negative about it. You want to be Debbie Downer. You're just not right. I understand that, some people think it's going to be cancelled or whatever, but that isn't what the law says. So I don't think it'll be cancelled. I think it'll be run. What can I say? Is the green card going to open or not? Oh, yeah, same question. Where is 27? Oh, here we go. Yeah, get your passports ready, says Confusion. Quite right. Wow, lots of questions about that. Haven't noticed your answer. Thank you for the time and attention. You're very welcome. Any update? Oh, God. I need to read these ahead. Hello, British Simon. I like you because you call me British Simon. How are you? Thanks for your help. Say hello to people from Nairobi, Kenya, serving the country. Hello, Nairobi, Kenya. I heard rumors that it will be in May or June for DV27. Yeah, maybe. Probably one of those. I'm leaning towards more May than June, but we'll see. Red Coat Leader. I mean, but to be clear, I thought I'm sure you can find videos. Let me just go back to this. I'm sure you can find videos of me talking about DV27 that I assumed it would be run before the end of 2026. Sorry, end of 2025. I did expect it to be run before the end of 25, and Curtis was telling me no. And Curtis, if you had to judge all the times that Curtis has been right or that I've been right, there wouldn't be many wins on the Curtis side, but that's one of them. And so he did win that one. He won that bet. I wouldn't have thought it was going to be this late, and there's good reason for me to say that. But nevertheless, I could be wrong again. I was wrong before, right? So there you go. Hello, Simon and Hope all as well. If the pause on DV26 is lifted, but the travel ban remains in place for Fiji and Tonga. Travel ban for Fiji and Tonga, is that right? 69% of OC selectees. Is my math correct that Oceania will likely go current? Is that true? 39 country. No, ban list of country. I didn't think Fiji was banned. It's not. What are you talking about? Fiji is not under ban. What are you talking about? You're confusing me. No, it's not. Fiji is not banned, right? It's not under the 39 countries. Am I wrong with that? It doesn't sound right to me. So I think you're getting a little confused. Maybe I'm confused, but I'm just looking at the list of countries. I don't see Fiji on there. So if that were the case, if Fiji were part of the 39 countries, not the 75 countries, the 39 countries. Let's just have a quick look at the 75 countries. Fiji, where are you? Yeah, Fiji is in there, right? So Fiji is affected by the 75 country pause, but that's a pause, that's not a ban. And so, it's a different thing. The ban is based around 212F, which is the president's authority that has been established by the courts as being a real authority to stop immigration from certain classes of immigrants and to stop entry. However, it's only on entry, it's not on visa issuance and so on. So the 39 country ban is on firm footing. It's on, it's very difficult to fight that. But the 75 country pause is just an administrative action, same as the DV lottery pause, both administrative actions. And they haven't got, presidential authority to stop work like that. Not even the president can say stop work, right? Because not even 212F allows them to stop working on these things. So so the administrative pauses are a different question than the ban, right? Now, if Fiji were banned, then yeah, that would be a heck of a dent in the Oceania, numbers, and that would make a massive difference. But it's not banned; it's only paused, and so therefore it's a little bit of a different thing. Will Oceania go current? I'm not expecting it to go current, but it could, because there is going to be unused visas. Now, the problem with that theory is that the government is not showing like they want to issue all the visas, right? They're bringing it down to the last 3 visa bulletins, where we have to see what they'll do. But it's possible they might put the region current. We have to wait and see what they do. Honestly, I have no predictions about what they're going to do in the future. Okay. Okay, you had your interview yesterday. That's good. Everything was fine. Same day I got offered to achieve E1 visa. And the question is, can I apply for it without hesitation? Yeah, you can do both things, right? You can always try a different visa route as well. You can be doing both things at once. You can also do 2 simultaneous cases for immigration. It's fine. You can definitely do that. There's no harm in that. Okay. Hello, sir. Is there any update regarding DV27? Okay, we talked about that. Will the DV pause could lift early May, or is it possible? It is possible, yes. It's just I think it's more likely to be towards the end of May, in my opinion. Greetings from Istanbul. Florida is the best. I don't know about the best. I do like Florida. I used to live in Florida for a little while. It's not a bad place by any means. I do like it. There's some pros and cons. Actually, some friends of mine have just bought a house there, just moving from here to there. They're moving over to there, and that's because they could sell their house, which was a modest house, nice house, but a modest house. My wife sold it for them. And they got about $1.1 million for this house. It's a decent small house in my area. But with that money, and they had a small mortgage. I think they had like a $200,000, $300,000 mortgage or something. So they had about $800,000 of equity. With that money, they were able to go and buy a much nicer house sitting on a lake with a little dock behind, a nice 4-bedroom detached 2-story house, lovely house. Then he's a pilot, so he goes over to Florida, just changes the airport he takes off from, and earns the same money, pays less taxes because he's no longer going to be paying state tax. So his cost of living will go down. He's got a nicer house to live in, and it's nice weather. It's a nice place. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for Florida. It's a nice place. Now there's some downsides. The property tax is higher, dollar for dollar. It's higher in Florida than it is in California. Our property tax is only high because the value of our houses is high, but our salaries tend to be higher over here. Florida salaries tend to be lower. but property tax is quite high, and insurance costs in Florida are quite high. So you have to sort of be aware of those things. So there's swings and roundabouts, but generally speaking, if you've got, let's say, a $300,000 a year job in California, that same job in Florida would probably be $200,000 a year. So it might seem like you're going to be better off living in Florida until you realize your salary, your job options are less, right? And not everyone earns 300K, I get it, but you can do that same math for any salary range, right? So if you're earning $100,000 where I live, you're officially poor. But if you were earning $100,000 in Florida, you'd be doing very well, right? So so that's how you have to sort of look at things, right? There's literally, I think in my area, I think the salary that you need to be below in order to be considered low income, for low income housing, there's sort of low income housing, I think it's $117,000 or something. Anything lower than that, you're low income. So $117,000 in many states in America would seem to be a lot of money, but in my area, that's like you're in trouble. You're poor. Anyway, okay. I have a consular interview in June. If I get 221 admin pause at this point, what would happen if the pause is lifted later in the year? Would I need to go back to the consulate, or would they keep the passport? Okay, so here's what I think will happen with those 221G cases when the pause is dropped, and I do believe the pause will be dropped. So, so this is what I think will happen. They won't need to invite people back for another interview to be able to issue those visas. However, some people will need to repeat their medical because their medicals will have expired or they're close to expiring, which means that the visa validity date would be too short, either short or non-existent. And so some people will need to repeat their medical. Then, other people, like if you were going for an interview in June and let's say in late June, the pause is lifted, they will simply, that would be a more or less immediate situation for you to get your visa. So if they had taken the passport from you, it would be very quick. They would, within a few days, you'd be able to get your passport with the visa in it. If they had not taken your passport, then obviously you're going to have to send in your passport. You're going to have to wait for that visa to be printed. There's Poppy. If the visa, if your interview has taken place in a previous month, let's say you interviewed in March, but the pause is lifted in June, they also will need to take a little bit of time to allocate a visa to your case, or visas to your case. And that means they've got to go back to KCC to do that. And so that's going to take a little bit of time. So I think there's going to be various scenarios will be going on when the pause is lifted. Some people will get a very quick response. Other people will find themselves waiting 2, maybe 3 weeks before they get anything. And there might be some embassies which have got a lot of people on 221G, and those embassies might take a bit of time to actually print out all those visas and so on. So the not everybody is going to be in the same exact position. Okay. Okay, hi, Mr. Simon. I'm a boy from Fiji, Oceania region. I'm 23 years old, studying in Belgium for 2 years, and I'm eyeing for the DV27 lottery. What are your chances? Your chance of selection in the lottery is about 1 in 20 in Oceania region. It's about 1 in 100 for most regions, typically. It varies. It can be up to 1 in 200. But in the Oceania region, it tends to be a better chance than that. So you've got something like almost a 5% chance, 1 in 20, right? So that means that you've got a very good chance. If you enter in the lottery, you've got a very chance of being selected. It's worth entering, right? And you just have to sort of take your chance. So I wish more people from the Oceania region would apply, but if they did, of course, that would reduce the chances. And the reason that Oceania has a better chance of selection is that there is an allocation of visas to each of the regions, which is performed by mathematical calculation. And that takes into account the populations in those countries. And in Oceania, the population is relatively high, but with a small amount of entries, which is why they get something like 5 times more chance to be selected in the Oceania region than other regions, roughly speaking. Okay. Lifting DV pause is more probable than other 75 countries, but the idea that we thought as soon as DOS gets the lawsuit, we'll do something to lift the pause did not happen so far, unfortunately. I don't know that we thought as soon as they got the lawsuit, they would just drop everything. I mean, the lawyers in particular, the lawyers are paid to argue. They like arguing. They love it, right? And so the government lawyers are happy to try and make an argument. It's just that the argument they've made for the DV lottery pause, for example, is just complete waffle. It's bullshit. And they know they're on a losing wicket there. But you know, we might see them capitulate once more and more of these little wins happen. That's why I was talking about the chip, right? So there you go. Boss, thank you for the good work. It's obvious Trump is using loopholes to fight against authorized immigration, sort of, yeah. He just don't want some countries there, true. To ban 75 countries for Greencard is absurd. Yep, no arguments there. Any update with regard to impact lawsuit? No, not really. The summary judgment was filed, I think, on Friday morning. So it's in. They have strong arguments, in my opinion. I think they're going to win. I think Red Eagle are going to win. We just have to wait and see what the government come back with. But the government's not going to come back with anything, other lawsuits are already achieving wins against the government on the same policies applied to different groups. And DV Lottery has much more of a case because, unlike other groups, we actually have a sunset date, right? We have the 30th of September deadline, which means that when you apply a temporary pause to us, DV winners, it can be irreparable harms, which is one of the standards they need to show. So there is harm being done. The lawsuits in other cases have shown that the judges believe the pause is arbitrary and capricious. That's important. Other lawsuits have shown that the APA was not followed correctly. Other lawsuits have shown that there is bad faith, and our lawsuits can show even more that there is bad faith. So the arguments are being won in other lawsuits, and they will be won in the DV Lottery lawsuits. I firmly believe that. I've always believed that. I mean, this has always been very clear to me that the government would only be able to get away with this behavior for a short period of time. Once it becomes unreasonable and the harm can be demonstrated, it was clear to me that a lawsuit would be effective. I just thought that the government would try and play ball a little bit earlier, but it seems like they want to argue. Whatever, let them argue. What are the chances the rule will for plaintiffs only? Worried if not in lawsuit, cheers. So there is a possibility, and this is why I said to people, if you're worried about this possibility, then you should be a plaintiff in the lawsuit, right? The lawsuits are only going for a win for their plaintiffs. If they happen to achieve a win for other people, to me, that's a bonus. But to the lawyers or their plaintiffs, that would not be so good, right? So, and the lawyers are working for the people that paid them, right? So you can't be upset with the lawyers or with paying plaintiffs if they've paid, towards that lawsuit and they achieve a win that is only for plaintiffs. You can't be upset with that. You had the same chance to get on that lawsuit, so it was up to you. Now, I personally think, and none of the lawyers agree with me on this, but I personally think that faced with all of these lawsuits that are chipping away at the 75 country pause and later the win on the DV Lottery pause, I personally think the government is probably going to say it's too difficult for us to sort out that this person gets to go through and that person gets to go through. So all the 75 countries are paused. but we've got all these people on various lawsuits who are all achieving wins, right? Everybody's winning against them at the moment, right? And so I don't think the government are going to sort of keep that pause in place when they've got to figure out, oh, is this person on a pause or is it not on a pause? To me, it would be easier for the government to just say, oh, screw it, we'll remove the 75 country pause and whine about the judiciary. I think that's probably what they'll do. But, I can't give you a percentage chance on that. That's up to you to just guess it, right? Can someone give me the Telegram channel name? I'm sure somebody has. Even if the government decided to do a Hail Mary scenario, do you think that damage has been done for higher case numbers in EU as the visa interview capacity just wouldn't be there? Yes, that's basically it. Yeah. This is why I was so frustrated to see the low numbers of cases being scheduled, because they didn't increase the visa bulletin. They're wasting capacity. And they did in the EU, for example, they've done that again. And yeah, there is a finite amount of capacity. Now, we might see individual embassies doing an amazing job, and we do see that. But what it will create is a long tail, a long tail, which I think I've explained before. That means that let's say they did what they did a couple of years ago, where they put the case number up to 50,000 current. They jumped from 30,000 to 50,000 in the final month of the year. Very few embassies were able to schedule cases right up to 50,000, but there were a few cases in each of those 1,000 groups. I can show you what that looks like a little bit. I was doing something this morning with a spreadsheet. I'm just going to hide your comment for a moment, Stephen, because I wanted to. I've done this sort of analysis before, which is sort of showing. Let me just move this across. Yeah, which shows how many. So basically, the way you do the math for to figure out whether cases will be scheduled or not, or how many cases will be scheduled, is you look at the number of real cases in each 1,000 bucket or 100 bucket if you're talking about Oceania and South America. And how many cases are in that bucket? 1,000 cases. 1,000 case numbers is the first number we have. Then how many of those case numbers are holes? How many are real cases? How many have been scheduled in each 1,000 cases, right? So let's go and have a look at Europe for a second, and we can see if you want to have a look at it. Let's see. Yeah, there's EU. So it's so firstly, this is what I mean by a long tail. So you can see that case numbers in Europe go up to 180,000. I fiddled around with Claude this morning working in Excel. Claude is an AI tool that just this morning, I think, or just over the last couple of days, released the ability to run Claude natively in Excel. And I thought, oh, that's cool. I'll go and reproduce the analysis that I've been using for years, which is the bucketing. It's the sort of the grouping of the cases by 1,000 range. And I created a simple prompt for Claude in Excel, and it went and did this thing, and it did a great job. I'm like, oh man, I do love technology, and I love AI at the moment, and Claude is working exceptionally well. Gemini is good. We use Copilot at work, but we use we use more professional tools, but yeah, the amount of work you can get done in a very, very short time is just staggering these days with all the tools that we've got through AI. But here's the EU bucket anyway. So these are the EU region, and it shows, for example, let's just take a range, right? So we're going to have a look at range from 1 to 1,000 cases. Whoops. From 1 to 1,000 cases, how many cases are holes? There's no status in that case. Well, 510, which means that 490 cases, you see over here, were real cases in the first 1,000 cases, right? And of those, 357 were scheduled, and 133 were not scheduled, right? What does that mean in terms of percentage? 72.9%, right, in the first 1,000 cases. And as you go down the range, you can see that the number range goes a little bit less. And that, as I explained before, is because individual embassies aren't scheduling right up to the the highest number. So there is always a sort of a little bit of a gradient as we go towards the higher case numbers. And that's how you can see what the effect of backlog is, basically. Now, there are a few cases missing from this, and I was chatting with Bossman this morning in Telegram group, and he has actually added in an assumed number of cases for some of the missing cases from here. There are some cases that went dark before January 1. The change to SEAC was noted. I think we saw the change around about November 12th, around about that date. And so sometime between November 12th and December 31st, there would have been cases which would have been scheduled, and those disappeared and became holes before we actually got the January the 1st extract. So those he's sort of calculated what those should be based on the trends and added those back in, which is kind of a neat thing to do, but it doesn't make any difference to this process because they've all been scheduled anyway. But you can see in these number ranges, we're at around about 58, 59%. I'm assuming you can see that. Maybe I should make that a bit bigger. So yeah, sort of 58%, 57, 56, around about that. And then less, obviously between 19,000 and 20,000, less in that range. But what that means is, just as I told you 2 or 3 weeks ago when they repeated the numbers, they're filling in we use in the backlog cases, they're filling in those cases up to 20,000. At some point, if they increase the number, let's say to 25,000 in the next visa bulletin, then we would see not all of the embassies would be able to get to 25,000, but they're pretty much most of them are getting up to 20,000 in the EU. And so we're seeing pretty good penetration of scheduled cases. But, the ideal would be that they're all sitting there at about 70% roughly. That's what we would expect if there was no backlog at all. Every number range would be at 70% roughly, 70, 75. Actually, if we were taking into account the dark cases, probably would be about 75%. 75% being the number of cases that are scheduled, having taken out non-responses. Basically, that's what doesn't get scheduled. So you look at 100% of the cases that are there, they're real cases. That was 490 in the first 1,000 cases, right? And then you say, okay, how many of those actually would want an interview? And you find that there's something like a 20% number, about 20, 25% in some regions, that people are they don't respond. They either didn't find out that they were a winner, they forgot to check, or they found out too late and they haven't submitted their DS-260 at all, or they just submitted their DS-260 or something like that. They're just, I classify them as non-responses, right? So there you go. All right, so Stephen, so yes, damage will be being done because of the lack of capacity being used in May and June. That's very damaging. So yeah, it's a pain. Okay. As one DV blogger stated, what I learned dealing with DV lottery is to get successful in the world, you compete not with successful people, you compete with people who cannot follow process, do 1, 2, and 3. That's very good. Yeah, that's a very good. You don't have to beat everyone, you just have to beat stupid people. That's basically it. He's right, yeah, or she. That's good. Aren't the USA government requiring data from the European Union regarding migration with Europe? Yeah, probably are. The reason some cases take longer to process through DS-260 than others is that some governments are very good at sharing their information between each other. They're very friendly towards the USA and they make their databases available and sometimes even have electronic access directly to their database information. So some are very good, and therefore it's very easy for us to do background checking on people in that country. So, for example, if the UK government said to the USA, hey, you can have access to our databases of births, deaths, and marriages, right, which is a famous database in the UK, tracking every single person, whether they were born, whether they died, or whether they got married, right? So maybe we've given the US government direct access to that data. I think we probably have. Then if we've also given them access to some of our police information, we probably have, and general security information, it means that someone from the UK who's only ever been in the UK can be processed with their DS-260 very quickly. Flip that round and go to one of the other extremes, let's say Iran, for example. Iran has not cooperated with the USA at all. Iran is not providing birth, death, and marriage information to the USA electronically, are they, right? And they're not going to provide security information and so on. And there is a general mistrust of Iran from America's point of view, right? And so it's going to take a lot longer if you've ever traveled in Iran, or if you were born in Iran, or, that's obvious, right? And so then as you go around the world, you'll get governments that have cooperated and can cooperate, some of them electronically. So some of them might be willing to cooperate, but their record keeping in that country is bad. And so, maybe America doesn't trust those countries as much. And so that will take longer. If you've worked in that country, if you were born in that country, if you lived in that country, your DS-260 could take longer to process. So, so yes, there's definitely data sharing going on between America and some of the European countries, right? For sure. Okay, I was selected in DB Lottery 26 from Djibouti, Africa. Case number is 88214. What choice do I have? Your only choice is to wait and pray, right? That's it. That's your only choice. You're at risk, for sure. You've always been at risk, let's be honest. They over-selected. They selected too many people in this year, and you're at a high case number range. So your chance has always been low. Now we've had the pause. Now we've got various things going wrong. Your chances become lower by everything that's gone on. So yeah, you've got a very risky situation, my friend. I'm sorry to tell you that, but I'm sure you already know that, right? So now I'm not saying it can't possibly work out for you. There's always a chance, but you're gonna have to wait and pray until mid-July or so to see whether you go current or not. And then if you do go current, you'll have to sort of hope that you can get an interview, but it won't be certain by any means. So good luck to you. Okay. For those who've already interviewed, is there a chance to get the visa after the 30th of September? No. Once 30th September comes, everything ends, right? So even if you have been interviewed and you were on 221G because you were missing some document, let's say the pauses are all gone, right? And you went through to interview mid-September and you forgot to take some document, but for whatever reason you didn't take the document until the 1st of October. Too late. You've blown your chance. That's it. There's no way it can continue. They literally cannot do anything for you after midnight on 30th of September. Okay. And your similar sort of question with a 221G, once it passes 30th of September, would that mean a person who actually won would lose it and they'd have to reapply again? Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, there's nothing that can be done. And the fact that you were selected in the lottery does you no good for future lotteries. It doesn't help you or hinder you in any way. It makes no difference to your chance of selection in future years. Okay. Yeah, it's a brutal thing. That 30th of September deadline is final. Under the X post about court updates, I was disgusted by the sheer amount of hateful comments towards immigrants, but it fuels immigrants to succeed. Thankful for people like you, Curtis, and other advocates. Eddie, I did see a couple of comments, and I half thought about responding to one person who sounded like, let's say, just not a typical American name. And it was someone who was talking about anti-Muslim, anti-Islamic sentiment. There are idiots in this country for sure. There are racists and idiots and, people who don't understand. But there are also plenty of people who do understand. There's plenty of advocates. There's plenty of people who are more welcoming. And, I mean, I don't think I wouldn't put myself in a class of people that wants to see completely wide open immigration. I don't want to see that. I want to see people vetted and background checked and that sort of thing. But I also understand that people who emigrate to another country are special. They have more gumption. They have more guts. They tend to do very, very well. Immigrants tend to do very, very well in this country. And this country, therefore, does well because it's been a welcoming place towards immigrants. And I wish some of these MAGA idiots could understand that. I wish I could educate them about that, but they're idiots and they can't be told. And those same idiots, by the way, are the ones that we run circles around, right? So, they're all sitting there. The MAGA morons are sitting there, in stupid states, sitting there in Alabama. They got, old white guy or whatever, and, never achieved anything in their lives. And they want someone to blame for their ineptitude. And so they loved it when Trump stood up and started blaming other people and giving someone to blame. They loved that, right? It fueled their inner, unhappiness, which was about their own ineptitude, not other people's, not other people's abilities and so on. So as long as you're a good person, as long as you're a hardworking person, as long as you're a fair-minded person, even if you don't agree with me politically, I'll welcome you to this country, because I know that as immigrants, you're going to do well, and if you do well, America does better. That's what immigration should mean, and it does mean, and America has done very, very well out of it. So it's a shame more people don't understand that. Okay, let me take a few more questions. Hi, Simon. The embassy in Cairo issued almost 900 visas before the pause, performing on the same pace after the pause. Do you think once they left the pause, they reached 7% cap by June, like last year? No, I don't think so. I think there's been enough suppression of pace of, you only have to look at the African scheduling numbers to see, no, there's no way they're going to get to the 7% number, even in an embassy such as Egypt. So no, I don't think the cap is a problem this year. I don't think the global cap or the regional caps will be hit, and I don't think any country is going to hit the 7% cap. Okay. If I go for 2NL, get 221G, will this invalidate my ESTA? No, it's sort of connected, but it shouldn't be any problem. So 221G is a refusal, and I think you're supposed to declare it as a refusal, but it's a very light-hearted refusal. It's a temporary refusal, right? And so in the past, I've actually told people to not declare it on ESTA applications. Which is probably wrong. I'm probably going to get some lawyer from the back of the room saying, hey, that's wrong, you should declare it. But if you declare it in an ESTA application, the ESTA applications are programmatically decided. So, it could make your application pop out and for you to need an interview in order to, or at least some extra processing in order to you getting granted the ESTA. So I personally wouldn't list it. I would forget about that. Strictly speaking, you should probably list it as a refusal. But yeah, I wouldn't, personally, I wouldn't do it. It's up to you. So I have a question about applying for the DV lottery. Is it okay if my background is white using green screen? Because I assure you in my country, they don't use real white background. Please answer. Yeah, so this is part of the problem with photos in general. Now you'll see on my DV photo tool. Let me just put that up. Where are we? DV photo tool. Show that. There you go. dvphototool.com. If you go to my website, I actually, the system that we've got there at DV Photo Tool does remove the background, but it does it very, very well. And so when you tell me you're using green screen, I get a little wincy because you're not supposed to digitally alter your image. What they care about is actually not the background. The background should be white. But when you're digitally altering the image to remove the background, you have to be extremely careful not to digitally alter the image of the person, the subject in the photo. And I trust my application there at DV Photo Tool, but I don't know that your skills are good enough to do your own photo. So if I were you, I would probably use DV Photo Tool, spend a few bucks, and just get it done properly. Personally, that would be my advice. But it's up to you. You can do your own thing. Obviously, you can. It really is up to you how you want to do that. Okay. Okay. Let's just see. Yeah, that was that one. So, yeah. Oh, hello, sir. I love you. How nice. I wanted people to love me. Thank you. Because of your guidance, I'm now in California, DV25, living, working as a network engineer and earning certifications. Listen to him. He knows his stuff. Awesome. Adam, I'm very glad to... Is it Adam? Ada. I don't know. Anyway, I'm very glad to hear you made a good choice as well in terms of the state. So, the all-you-can-eat Huffets are great in Texas. Huffets or Buffets, yeah. Especially for lardasses like me. I went to one the other day. I'm a big guy, and I can eat sometimes. But I went to an all-you-can-eat buffet the other day, and honestly, people were just being ridiculous with what they were putting on their plates. You don't need that much food. And so, but I think people get this thing when they go to an all-you-can-eat buffet, they almost treat it as a challenge. Oh, all I can eat a lot, And so they're stuffing their plate. I saw one guy who had 2 plates, and both of them were overflowing. You can go back for another. You don't have to put it all on the plate. You can go back if you want a little bit more. You can go back, for a second run. But this guy, no, he had to make his point. He'd been challenged. So I don't know, John. It's like some people are a bit crazy. But yeah, I remember when I used to see all-you-can-eat buffets when I came here from the UK. I'm sure I packed on the pounds. I was traveling to the States for a long time. Before I came to live in the States in 2014, I was traveling here and working for a client. For about 5 years, I was here in America for 2 weeks out of every 4 weeks. So they were flying me over here. They were putting me into a hotel. They rented me a car. They paid for all my meals and everything else. And yeah, I gained some weight because you're eating in America all the time, and it was all expenses paid. So yeah, unfortunately, that's when I became a lard ass. So there you go, John. DV26, when I hear, if everything goes well, is Kentucky or West Virginia a good state to move to? I'm leaning towards one of those two. Are you serious? Are you serious? Why would you go to West Virginia or Kentucky? They're beautiful places, no doubt, lovely scenery and everything else. But economically, did it not occur to you to look at the poverty rates in those 2 states? They're terrible. Education is low, low rated. Please do some research. Maybe you can find a nice little place to live in West Virginia or Kentucky that's a nice little place, but you're surrounded by uneducated, poor people. Please, I can't think of anything worse. I almost think you're joking. I hope you're joking. Don't go to places because they're cheap. Please don't make that mistake, right? If you find a place is inexpensive or cheap, they don't like the word cheap here. They say inexpensive. But in my UK voice, I want to say the word cheap. But if you find a place that's cheap to live, that's inexpensive to live there, there's a reason it's cheap to live there. It's probably crap, right? Expensive places are expensive to live there because it's better to live there, right? California is an expensive place to live, that's sure. Where I live is expensive. My house is worth almost $3 million, right? So yes, that's expensive. It's horrific. It's terrible. But wages are higher, and when you're going out your front door, you're not going to get someone shooting at you. And and politically, we're a bit more sensible here, and so on. There's lots of good reasons. I can drive, a little bit, and I'll be on the coast, see some beautiful coastline. I can take my RV. I can go camping in the, best camping in the world. It's a great place to live here. That's why it costs more money to live here. Now in West Virginia, economically challenged place, just that from the very beginning is like terrible. Like, why would you go there, or Kentucky? Unless you want to go and work at Kentucky Consular Center and try and make the DV lottery better for us all. But I mean, the KCC, the wages at KCC, the staff there earn, I think, about $16, $17 an hour or something. It's like, oh my God. So yeah, don't do that. Go somewhere more expensive. It's worth it. Let's say we can get a court decision in June. Considering that embassies report their capacities at the end of the month and VB numbers are drafted on the first days, does that mean we'll only see final VB influenced by court decision to move further? Maybe, yeah, but it might create, a situation where only the last VB, goes current. But, that's all a lot of prediction. It could happen before then. We could see regions going current before then. It's possible. Asia is already current, of course, right? Although it's got a number, it is actually de facto current. The number it's got is higher than any case number that exists. So, wouldn't be a total surprise to see other regions going current. Okay, let's see. Your chances with EU 35K and not very busy embassy basically gone because of the last VB. It certainly hasn't been improved because of the last VB, right? So if they'd have moved to 25K, let's say, in the last VB, and then and then go to 30K, let's say, in the next VB after that, then yeah, you'd have been in a better position at 35K, a bit more hopeful, right? But it's not gone. Unfortunately, this process is you won't know until the last VB what the last VB will say, right? And if you are in a good embassy and we do see one of those Hail Mary events that happens, then yeah, you could see something. It's possible. It's not very likely, but it is possible that we see a VB for Europe that allows 35K to be interviewed. But I do want to say, looking at the numbers, that shouldn't happen, but it's possible, right? It just can't be. You can't say 100% it won't happen. I certainly couldn't say 100% it will happen, but I can't say 100% that it won't happen. Okay. In the federal poverty guidelines, a family of 5, including the sponsor of mine, the average income would be somewhere in the 37K annually. But my sponsor's family lives in Kenya, so how is the calculations? You can't use a sponsor in Kenya. The sponsor for the I-134 has to live and work in America. Okay, can't use the family in Kenya there. Now, if you've got some financial support from a family member or anything else in Kenya, because they've got a lot of money in the bank or whatever, then you can maybe show that, but that money should really be moved to your bank account prior to the interview, and probably even get a letter saying that that's a non-refundable gift to support you. So yeah, once you're into the federal poverty guidelines, it means that you're filling in an I-134, I presume, and that is only valid if the sponsor is living and working in America, and it should be a citizen or green card holder. Okay. DB26 winner from Algeria, case number 32XXX. Interviews are very low, only around 20,000 now, which is, yeah, it's not great, but it's not terrible. There are some embassies worse off than Algeria. If the pause is removed, can the US Department of State speed up or force more interviews? So centrally, they won't force more interviews, but Algeria may, like other embassies, they may say, oh, those people can now have issued visas, and maybe they put the accelerator, press on the accelerator a bit and schedule more people. That's likely to happen because up to now we've seen capacity held back, not because of a central decision to hold it back, in my opinion, but because the embassies decided by themselves to hold back pace. And so, hopefully, yes, we'd see them accelerate a bit. Okay, fingers crossed, but we don't know exactly how they'll behave. Okay. Just in the live, case number is Europe 17,000. No interview yet, but do you think the pause will stop soon? Yeah, I hope so. Masterful database. I don't know about that. Please, what about banned countries and appointed interview? Do we have any hope? Yeah, you got some hope still. I talked about it earlier in the video, so go back and have a listen. When will India be eligible for DV lottery? They should create India lottery. Never is the answer. India won't. Why would they create an India lottery? You totally don't understand. DV lottery stands for diversity visa lottery. The idea of the diversity visa is to promote immigration from countries that don't already have a lot of immigration. India has a ton of immigration. I wonder if I've got the numbers to hand. I could show you. Let's see, travel ban country list. No, don't have it to hand, but I did do. Oh, it's weird. Country immigration. Oh. Sorry, just trying to find eligibility. I'll show you why. Eligible. Let's see. What do I do? I did a video on that just recently. You might be able to find it there. But basically, the way the DV lottery is worded is to promote immigration from countries that don't have a lot of immigration already. And the way they calculate that is they look at a 5-year rolling window, and they calculate the number of people immigrating on 3 visa categories: family-based, immediate relative, and employment-based. Those 3, IR, FB, and ER, I think it is. So they look at those 3 columns on the annual report, and they total those up for each year, and they take 5 years. And the number that's coming from India is already massive, way, way, way higher than the 50,000 number that it should be. So there's no way India is ever going to be included in the diversity visa lottery. Now, if you think that that there should be another lottery for India specifically, or one that should include India or Indians, fine, but not many people in Congress would agree with that, because there are already lots of people coming here from India. It's not an underrepresented country, and already most of the H1s go to people from India, and so there's a lot of people who come here on those sort of visas. So I work with, if I sort of think about the number of people I work with, let's say I work in a team of 30 or 40 people, generally on a daily basis. My own company has several hundred engineers, nearly 1,000 engineers. And of those engineers, I would say, the vast majority of those are from India. They're either living in India, we're using offshore workers quite a lot, but even locally, in Northern California, where I live, most of the people I work with are from India. So it's not that there's not enough Indians here. We've got plenty. So sorry about that. Judging by what's happening, I pretty much lost hope that they'll get to my EU 40K case number. Yeah, it's getting a bit scary, right? Not impossible, but yeah. UK is a member of Five Eyes. Yes, I think that's true. So John and I know what that means. What about the 75 country pause? Any update? So yeah, I gave an update earlier in the video. I think you can just go back to that pretty early on in the video. Any chance for interview at Nairobi Embassy case number 19.5? I don't know with Nairobi particularly. You could have a look at the statistics on the tracker. Let's see, Sprit Simon tracker. Let me just show you that for a second. This is worth everyone looking at. Please do go in. We've got 259 submissions on the tracker. Here's how the thing works. Very easy to use. You can look at the dashboard, and you can have a look at, if you want to find some particular country, you can see, where they're at, and you can have a look at the 2NLs. Let's have a look at the latest 2NLs, January, February, nothing recently. And then a bunch of cases. We've got a lot of cases from Kenya. We've got very good response. I think it's the largest number of responses from one particular country that we've got. But the cases that are scheduled so far, only go down to what, about 15,000? And that, sort of 15,000 roughly. So nothing higher than that. But yeah, you can go and have a look. There is that one. Sorry, 16th of March. Okay, so they got to 34,000. 2NL? I doubt that. I don't think that's true. I think this is probably someone's made a mistake there. I don't think they got on 16th of March. I don't think they went to case number 34,000, unless somebody was very tricky and wise and got scheduled somewhere else and moved back to Kenya and got scheduled that way. That does happen sometimes. But we've seen that in previous years, but I don't think that's the case. I don't know if that's the case here or if somebody just made a mistake. Okay, but anyway, go and have a look. By the way, I'm going to work on these charts, so I want to make this this chart. I'm going to move that to becoming the period of time between submission and DS260 processed, where people find out. So that's going to give us a bit of an idea of how long that will take, and I'll split that out by region. So I'm going to change some of these visualizations over time, just when I get to it. And then you can see, we've got a lot of embassies. The most responses we got is 36 from Kenya. So it's a lot of data there already. It's not perfect in DV26 because I introduced it so late, of course. In DV27, it's going to be much more useful. So I'm hopeful about that. Okay. Just want to let you know you're getting more and more popular in Egypt as well as the rest of the world. Thank you kindly for dedication. Looking to meet you someday. That was very nice of you to say. I think also Saha, what's his name? He calls himself Grandpa or something. But he's very popular as a DV lottery YouTuber. For some reason, some people don't like him. I don't know why. I like him. Find him a very pleasant guy to get along with. I've spoken to him numerous times. I've been on his videos. I think he's been on mine. So he's pretty knowledgeable guy about Egyptian matters. Lives in America, a YouTuber. So I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. Wondering if you still think Pakistan would be eligible for 2027. So I'm not 100% sure by any means that Pakistan is going to be eligible for 2027. But it's a sort of a small possibility, very small possibility. But then maybe for DV28 and maybe beyond that, we might start to see some of that coming in, because this general attack on immigration is going to start factoring into the numbers. So the 5-year numbers that we rely on will start to sort of make possibilities that we see Bangladesh coming back or Pakistan coming in, UK, more or less definitely staying in, at least for the time being. And for all that the bad things that Trump does, his actions will have caused more of a chance of some extra countries coming back into the lottery, and Pakistan is one of those. We just don't know for sure when that's going to happen. And it's a pretty outside case. I think Pakistan was close. But it's not that likely. Okay, so don't think I'm saying it's definite by any means. Okay, almost at 2 hours here now, so I'm just going to take the last couple of questions and we'll call it a day. I'm from Ethiopia. If we selected for DV27, I will form of DS260. Then my passport may be expired. How to make unlock of the DS260? Okay, I see what you're saying. So when you enter the lottery, it's important that your passport is unexpired on that day. If it expires later before you get processed, that's okay. You can update that. You can unlock the DS260 and you can make that change, or you don't even have to unlock it. Actually, For the passport renewal, you just take the new passport to the interview. So not a big deal. Okay, don't worry about that. How many diversity visas have been issued known for the 55K DV26 visas? Since the 23rd of December, we've been on a pause from Department of State, and from the 19th of December for USCIS. At the point of January the 1st, 7,100 visas had been issued at that point, right? And so it won't have increased beyond that point at all. So there's still only 7,000 have been issued. But there's been some number of people, which we can't be exactly sure, but we know it must be thousands of people, who are in 221G status, hoping for the pause to be released. So if the pause is released, there'll be a quick increase in those numbers. However, we can't get those issued numbers anymore because SEAC database has changed, and so we don't know. We don't know how many, how many will have been issued, and the government are very, very behind on their issuance statistics. So we won't know for some time. Okay. EU 11, is it too late to send the DS260? No, it's not too late. How much are the chances of getting interviewed until September 30th, especially if you're from a 75 pause country? You're going to have to pull the trigger, aren't you? You're going to have to say, I'm going to assume that the pause is taken down and therefore submit the DS260. If you don't submit the DS260, I would say in the next week or two, you're probably going to be out of luck, right? It's not totally too late, but you're already a little bit at risk, right? I think the 75 country pause and the DV lottery pause will be taken down before the end of September. That's my personal opinion. I think that will happen. So if I were you, I would be submitting my DS260 immediately, right? But it's up to you. Okay. Oh, here we go. Here's somebody who wants a guarantee. I want to spend a few bucks, but why not? But I just want your word that if I use your website, I will be fine. And should I take the photo in a studio, then send it to my phone through Telegram or WhatsApp? Okay. If you use my website, I think you're going to be fine. But I'm not going to give you a guarantee, right? Because if you want a guarantee, buy a fridge. That's what I always say to people. That's how you can get a guarantee. The reality is, I believe I know more about DV lottery than anyone else. Honestly, I think I probably know more about the DV lottery process than people working at the government on the DV lottery. I honestly believe that. I believe that my engineers have done a great job on the photo app, and I think it's not perfect by any means. It can be fooled. There was some stupid arsehole who made a little Facebook video showing that he tricked my photo because he took a photo of someone standing like that, and so the second ear wasn't showing, and they're looking away from the camera and they take a photo. It's like, look, if you're stupid enough to take a photo where you're not looking at the camera, I can't help you. We had to sort of set up the AI rules to assume that you have a brain, right? If you don't have a brain and you can't take a photo of yourself without screwing that basic thing up, then the AI tool isn't going to help you. And if you don't like those terms, then use some other way of getting your photo, right? Honestly, you have to use a little bit of common sense in this process. And I can't. I'm not Macy's. I'm not going to be offering, or Costco or something. I'm not going to be offering lifetime guarantees for stupid people. Anyway, you'll figure it out. You can decide on, or not. It's up to you. It's up to you entirely. Hello, Simon. Thank you for your time. I will ask about DV26, case number 58K from Africa. Do you think I'll be able to get an invitation for the interview? And how about the general pause? So, I think this will be about my last question, maybe one more after this. Your case number will probably go current. I believe your case number will go current before the end of the year, right? So you've got a chance in that way. The question then is, which embassy are you at, and whether your embassy is going to be able to schedule up to that case number. And I don't know that. I don't have good data on all of the embassies. I'm trying to collect data, but it's not possible to collect all of that data and keep on top of it in a totally accurate way. So So I hope you get a chance, and at 58K, you really should get a chance. But this has been a weird year, and there's already a lot of risk, even at your number, I'm afraid. Okay. Okay. Well, just explain briefly on what I should use to take the photo and how to use your website, please. You can use your own phone. You don't have to go to a professional to take the photo. You can do if you want, but you can use your own phone. Now, when you're taking a selfie of yourself and you do that, actually, I'm trying to demonstrate that it messes you up, but I'm in selfie position here. One thing you've got to make sure is that you're not sort of like raising your shoulder like that, right? And tilting your head badly. Our photo app will try and help you correct if there's a slight tilt in your head, but it won't fix really bad problems, right? And also if you made yourself very lopsided on your shoulders, that's also a bit of a problem, right? So I would rather, if you're going to take a photo as a selfie, hold your phone with both hands in front of you. Can you see my hands here? So do it like that, right? Hold your hands like that, as far away as you can get, so that your shoulders are level with each other. And take a photo that way, or better yet, get someone else to take a photo of you. Your background doesn't matter so much because our photo tool is going to take away the background for you. Just make sure that don't wear a white shirt, please. Don't wear white clothes. Wear something with a bit of contrast. Make sure your lighting is pretty good, and look at the camera face on with a non-smiling expression. Not big. We don't want big grins. We want a serious, neutral expression. And try and make sure that both your ears are showing if you've got both ears. By the way, some people have asked me, why didn't I set the AI up so that it counts the ears, and if you don't show both ears, then it will disqualify that photo? Well, it's because some people have lost their ears. That's literally why. We could not be sure that there wasn't some percentage of people that perhaps had lost an ear, or they wear their hair and their ears are covered and so on. So in order to try and make the tool a bit more useful for more people, we've made an assumption that people understand that they have to look at the camera, right? And if you can't figure that instruction out, then then I'm sorry, you're unhelpable. But there you go. Okay, this will be the last question. This is kind of interesting one. A woman who won the DV lottery and went to the US said that most of the questions they ask you in the interview are from the form DS-260 you filled out. She is right. I think she is right is a statement, not a question. Maybe you're asking, is she right? That's sort of correct. They do the interviews are. This will be the last question. So let me just sort of wrap this up with this sort of explanation a little bit. The interviews are very quick in DV lottery world. They're very quick. Some of them will last less than 5 minutes, right? And they're pretty conversational. They're generally very happy interviews, and the consular officer is very relaxed doing DV lottery interviews because they know that this person sitting in front of them has won a lottery. It's an amazing chance. It's a wonderful thing, right? And so it's already a happy experience for everybody sitting at that table, right? It's a happy thing for the consular officer as well as the people. Now, people are nervous, but the consular officer is not nervous. They're not looking for people who are trying to game the system or anything else like that. So they're going to ask a few questions. Mainly it will be about the questions that you put in the DS-260, but it could just be conversational questions as well, right? But don't expect it to be a big interrogation. It's not that, generally speaking. There's only in sort of weird situations, like, for example, they may ask about your education. They may look to sort of confirm some of the things that you've said in your DS-260 about where you got your education. That's because the education level is a requirement for the DV lottery. They may ask you about your relationship or about family members because they're looking to prove that you added all of your derivatives on your original form, because that's a requirement, right? They're going to ask you maybe things about, what are you going to do in America? Where will you live? Have you got any friends there, right? Those sound innocuous, but what they're really looking to assess there is whether you're going to become a public charge or not, right? They want to know whether you've got a good plan to go to the USA. What sort of work will you do in America? Again, they're looking for public charge concerns. Have you ever been to America? Is another question. Have you ever been there? Why do you want to go there? You know, what makes you think you're going to be happy there? Those are general questions, but they're just looking to set up a bit of a a relationship, you could say. They want to hear how people answer the questions, and they want to put you at ease. And they might also be looking to sort of confirm some of the information in your DS-260. If you say, yes, I've been to America and I love going to Disneyland 4 times, but it never listed travel history on your DS-260, that might cause you a problem, right? So, so they're looking sometimes to confirm that you've told the truth in the DS-260. But generally speaking, it's a happy interview. They're not looking to cause you any problems. If you got married after the win, they will ask some questions about that, almost certainly. They'll ask, how long have you been in that relationship? When did you meet? Do you have any photos from the wedding? Do you have any evidence that you had this relationship before you won the lottery? They might ask those sort of questions. That's the only thing. Okay. All right, everybody. I'll call that a day. It's been over 2 hours. It's quite a long session, but my wife is out doing some things anyway, so I thought I'd take some extra time. But anyway, have a great day. Have a great weekend. Give me a thumbs up, like if you like this video. Please do make sure you're subscribed to my channel. And if you haven't already filled out the tracker, please go to britssimonsays.com and fill out the tracker. It's on, what's it on? It's on britssimonsays.com/DV tracker. Let me just put that in the chat, because that's kind of a thing. You've got to make sure you put that all in there correctly. Yeah, please do add your information. I've just put it in the chat. Do add your information to that tracker, please, so that we can get all the data we can for DV26. Okay? All right, everybody. Thanks, Ed. Bye-bye.